Ahoy and welcome back to the Captain's Log. My name is Rixley. I'm a systems thinker and strategic designer, and I work with organizations to go through large, complex change. And right now, I've currently shifted my focus towards the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. I think this is an incredible case study. There's a lot of transformation and change about to happen. This is a big, wicked problem and a very big, complex system that we're looking at here. So this last week, I've been diving into a lot of this complexity and having a look at how the lay of the land and how this ecosystem actually works, who are the players, and basically mapping out this whole structure so that I can understand really what it is, and I can look at it more objectively. So I will be following this as this progresses. I will be documenting. I will be bringing in more information into this board that I've got. I like to look at things visually. I would also like to get onto the DOGE team. I have actually sent in my application. If anyone out there has access or can get my application, ask Vivek or Elon to have a look at the DOGE's X, where I have direct messaged them my resume. That would be great. But in the meantime, I am going to keep my head in this project. So I'll share with you guys what I've learned this week about this system and basically how I've been laying this whole thing out. So firstly, when I go to this knowledge wall that I've been creating, I do have this dashboard of key metrics. I do know that Elon and Vivek will be putting together their own version of this, or a website where they'll be showing the information as they roll. Probably going to release some key metrics as they go. But I've got here on my dashboard regulatory rescissions, reductions in workforce, federal spending cuts, government contracts cancelled, and a total savings. And I have been finding some really interesting things, actually. So just, I think we should always start with having a look at the debt, because the debt is really the crux of all this. The debt is a really, really big problem. And currently, every single person in the United States has $106,766 debt. You guys actually own part of this debt. So this is a big problem, and I've actually found something really interesting. I found this website here, which is a US debt clock, which actually, I think it plugs into the Treasury data, but it actually shows the debt as the debt goes up in number, and you can actually see it goes up quite quickly. Like if I'm counting now, in hundreds of thousands of dollars, we have a look. It's 600,000, 700,000, 800,000. 900,000. It's going up that quickly in time. So the clock is really ticking on this problem. Like this is a very real issue that the United States has, and the longer that this doesn't get resolved, the bigger the problem becomes. So you can understand the urgency as to why the DOGE has been created, and why they're going to have to be radically cutting all this bloated spending. So I have found this. This is interesting. This is US Debt Clock, usdebtclock.org. So you can go and visit that website. It's open to the public. And then let's have a look here, because there was something interesting that happened this week as well. And I've just created a bit of a newsroom here. So the DOGE newsroom, like I said, the question of the day will be, what did you get done this week? I'm sure that's a question that's coming for every single person in every department and agency in the United States very shortly, if not already. So Vivek posted this week on X that it was a picture of him on the beach on Thanksgiving Day reading two documents. And I wanted to get hold of these documents and actually have a look. And I believe that he is reading these documents in preparation for their visit to Congress on the 5th of December, where I'm sure Vivek and Elon will be giving their first recommendations or synopsis on some of these debts and rescissions that they can make within this debt cutting exercise that they're going through right now. So I had a look at these documents, and just to save you the boredom of going through these documents in detail. I mean, I definitely think it's important to understand these things, and I'll put a link to the documents on the description in the YouTube channel, so you can take a look if you wanna get access to these and dive into them yourself. But these documents here they're two documents, and they were released in December 2022 by I'll give you so they're from the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO. What you'll also find is there's a lot of acronyms that are in this ecosystem. I've actually got a full list of those as well. But the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, in December 2022, and this report analyzes the potential budgetary deficit, or the potential budgetary effects, of various policy options that would decrease federal spending or increase revenue over the next decade. So there's 2 volumes of this document that Vivek's got there. And there's 2. So the volume 2, it focuses on smaller reductions, and there's 59 options within this smaller reductions. And I can go through some of the key points in those, and then volume 2 goes through the larger reduction. So volume 1 is they're saying that it's going to reduce the deficit by more than $300 billion over the 2023 to 2032 period, and volume 2 focuses on smaller reductions, 59 options, and this will reduce the deficit by less than $300 billion over the same period. So some key points about these documents are that the reports aim to inform lawmakers about the potential budget implications of various policy choices to address the rising federal debt. And the CBO doesn't endorse or reject any specific option. These are just basically some options on the table to inform decision-making, lay the cards on the table, so to speak. And the CBO projects that under current law, the federal deficit would average $1.6 trillion annually between 2023 and 2032, which is considerably higher than historical average. And this rising debt poses risks to economic growth, interest payments, and the government's ability to respond to future challenges. So this is quite concerning. And the option, they've split these categories into 3 categories for these options. So the first category is mandatory spending. So these options include proposals related to programs like Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, and reducing Social Security benefits for high earners. The second option category is discretionary spending. So these options consider reductions in non-defense discretionary spending, such as funding or transportation, education, and healthcare programs. And the third is a revenue option. So these options explore potential tax increases, and some examples include raising tax rates on long-term capital gains and qualified dividends, imposing a new payroll tax, and implementing a consumption tax, or VAT. So that is it. And when I've looked at some of these things, like, when I've actually laid them all out as cards, and I think maybe we could do something with these. I think it's really important that we have some fun with this as well, because you can't solve a problem if you don't have fun with it. And I think that Elon is very good at that. So some of the key things to note in this volume 2, the smaller reductions, I just noticed some things. And like, for example, option 25 is to defer development of the B-21 bomber, which would give a saving of $45 billion. And I just think, like, when you have a look at the Department of Defense and the budget allocations there, I mean, this is a department that has failed 7 consecutive audits. So would you be giving this amount of money, to somebody who hadn't passed an audit? And just something else to note on this, like, I've worked with defense, I've worked with military, I've worked with Air Force before, and I do know that, something like this, a B-21 bomber, what a lot of people don't realize is that when you see a plane flying in the air, that plane was probably designed like 10 years ago, so it takes a lot of time for something like that to come into reality, to actually get built and to launch. I don't know exactly the time frame on something like this, but I know from my experience working with these types of agencies that it is actually a very long time frame between when they sign something off and when the thing actually gets built. And what's concerning about this is that when you think about warfare in the future, will the wars of the future really have manned craft? So I think it's really important when designing or making these kind of big, large spending outlays that it's very important to make decisions for the future rather than where you currently are now, especially because of the rate of change, which is increasing exponentially. Like, it's getting faster and faster as we go. And so I think that really needs to be considered when things like this are being decided upon and built. So there's more, reductions proposed for Department of Defense. There's quite a few in there. I definitely think that particular department will be getting looked at thoroughly throughout this process. So that's my key findings there. The next thing I did this week was actually I tried to further consolidate the agencies and departments. And this was actually very tricky to do because when I had a look through all these different websites and documents to try and find the full list of departments and agencies, I really it was a bit of a struggle to actually find them because there was some listed on some sites and some not on others. So I actually had to create a consolidated list, which I've done here. So, and I've tried to find the budget allocation and the amount of employees for each of these departments and agencies. So from what I can tell, there's a full list here that if you jump on the video, you'll be able to see. But what I've actually noticed about this is that it's probably quite obvious, but it's very complicated. Very, very complicated. So let me just show you what I actually did. So I went through, there's something called the US Government Departments and Agencies A to Z Index. And so I went through this index and I actually collated all the departments and agencies from this list. There also are quite a few double ups in this list, so I had to comb through and actually consolidate that. For example, Army's in there, and then there's US Army. So I don't know if they've just done that for the ability to search if you typed in one or the other, but there's that. And then I also looked at the US government manual. There is actually a manual available online, which also has all the key documents and artifacts for the US government. So there's the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, organizational chart, history, boards, commissions, committees. It basically just gives you a whole list of key documentation for that, for the US government, or, the United States government manual is what it's called. And so I combed through here and I just found that there were some categories here. So there's legislative branches, judicial branch, the legislative branch, judicial branch, executive branch departments, executive branch independent agencies and government corporations, quasi-official agencies and international organizations. So that's how they split it up within here, which is different to the A to Z index, which doesn't give you as much information in terms of the categories of these particular departments and agencies. So from what I've gathered, I do have the numbers here, and just keep in mind that this is just completely off, I'm just doing this off my own back. I don't have access to official documentation or anything like that, but from what I can tell, the categories that I've found are military command, executive office, departments, independent agencies, quasi-government organizations, quasi-government. I think there's another one, quasi-government organization. I can fix that. Advisory body, government corporation, program office, advisory council, interagency council, judicial body, legislative bodies, international entities, international organizations, multilateral and regional bodies, regulatory commissions, and special offices. And what I've wrangled so far is that there are 436. So then what I've done is I've created a full ecosystem of these departments and agencies, and I'm still combing through, and basically what I'm doing is I'm assigning them the total funding and the amount of employees. I'm giving them a color code. I'm noting which department or other agency that they're connected with. So then we can start kind of like mapping all these out and making a bit more of a visual representation of what this whole ecosystem looks like. And I think when you're dealing with any complex challenge or transformation, that's the first step, is really to understand the lay of the land and actually to understand what's the breadth of this situation and how are all these different players interconnected with each other. And then what I've also done is I've gone through and dug up the strategic documents for some of these agencies and departments. And I've been finding some pretty interesting stuff, guys. Like, for example, let's have a look here at something like FEMA, for example. This one kind of has been coming up because you notice what's going on in Carolina. And I've looked at the strategic plan, and I was kind of blown away at this diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's like the main goals and objectives for this organization. You know, when you think about this organization and what the actual focus of it, which is disaster response and emergency management. And when you have a look at the strategic plan, you think it would be more focused towards that. But, you know, the first goal of this particular organization is to instill equity as a foundation of emergency management. The second one is to lead whole of community and climate resilience. And the third one is promote and sustain a ready, FEMA and prepared nation. So when I hear words like sustainability, equity and all these kinds of things, it kind of, especially for an organization which is really supposed to be about emergency response, I mean, that's kind of concerning. You think it would be more, and you can dive into these documents. They are readily available to the public. You can just go to FEMA's website and just download the strategic document. I am making a whole file structure with all these strategic documents in them as I go. What else can I tell you about this week? Well, I think we can have a lot of fun with these. The other thing is, actually, this is kind of interesting. I know this one's been brought up a little bit. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB. And I think that with a lot of these agencies and departments, well, actually maybe not so much the departments, but the agencies, is that a lot of these agencies are created and they seem to have a lot of overlap with other agencies. So it's like regulatory bodies on regulatory bodies on regulatory bodies. And it's so, like, I can't imagine, trying to be an innovative person in the United States when you have all these regulations, like really, really steep regulations. And when you have a look at an agency like this, the CFPB, there's other agencies with overlapping responsibilities. I flagged 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other departments, or 8 other agencies, 7 agencies and 1 Department of Justice. So, it goes to, you do have to wonder, are a lot of these agencies probably obsolete? Can they be consolidated? I mean, when I zoom out on this board, it's just huge, the amount of agencies within this, this ecosystem. Another thing I think which is important to mention is around the glossary of terms. I've collated like the commonly used acronyms. This comes from the government manual. I think especially when you get into a room with a lot of government people, I've been in many rooms where I've been in a room with government people and even just consultants or corporate people, and they start talking in acronyms, and the language really becomes a barrier to actually to understanding a problem. And I feel like, it's very useful to understand these acronyms. And I think language also can become a barrier when we're dealing with a complex change like this. It can make things very convoluted and confusing. So I think when we get to actually designing the new structures, we will have to be on that in a way to make sure that the language is inclusive and that people can have a conversation around these things in a way that's a little bit more human, right? And then I've also created basically a glossary of what these things actually mean in terms of the categories of these departments and agencies. So, how do they differ? What are some examples of particular agencies within those categories? And, what are they for exactly? So that is basically what I've got to this week on this particular project. And I'm going to keep looking and keep staying in touch and on top of what's going on within this whole transformation that's going on. And I think this is just an incredible case study. If you're interested in complex systems and transformation, and even if you're looking at your own organization, and because every business, essentially every single person, I think leading into the future is going to have to be some kind of systems leader. So this is probably this is a huge one, but you can apply some of this process to your own organization. Mapping out things like this is a really good way to kind of look at things objectively. I did mention that last week. And if you have any questions, or if you want to dive deeper into any of these particular agencies or topics, or if perhaps you're interested in getting on board and helping me with this board, then do get in touch. I'd love to get some help with this. I'd like to have a little bit of fun and maybe build a team around this, because I think it will be very, very interesting. And that's it. That's it from me, I think, this week. So please, if you do find this useful, you can definitely, it would be helpful if you shared this on your feed. Do give me a follow on my X profile. That would be fantastic. And like I said, if you can get me in touch with either Elon or Vivek, I would love to join the team. I think it would be an amazing thing to actually take one of these abandoned offices. There's plenty of real estate around Washington that seems to be quite vacant. I think it would be a great thing to do to turn one of these offices into a transformation hub and start building this out in a physical environment so that we can start bringing people in. There will need to be some tough conversations had. There will need to be collaboration within these different departments and agencies, to potentially, consolidate them or work out, which functions of each of these are actually important. I think Vivek and Elon are going to be doing some very harsh cuts. I think that's going to be required because they dramatically need to push the stop button on this increasing debt, at least slow it down. But I think there will be a period where things will need to be redesigned, and basically there'll be a lot of collaboration involved, and a lot of facilitation required, I think, to consolidate this big complex mess that's kind of going on here. But that's it from me, guys. I hope all is well with you and you've had a great week, and I look forward to keeping on top of this. I think on the 5th of December, we'll be able to hear some more information from the DOGE after Vivek and Elon meet with Congress. And so I'll be staying on top of that. But otherwise, have a great week. I'll see you next week. Hold fast.